There we go. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the third module of Philea's Children Youth Peer Learning Journey, and the last module that we will be doing and hosting before the summer season, although it has somewhat started already. This is an online space where we share and learn from case studies, programs, and initiatives of how foundations meaningfully work together with children and young people. And we're collecting these key recommendations, all the information provided, and the captured learnings from this journey on the Philea website. So in case foundations or organizations would like to trial out any of these practices, this is the space to get the ideas and recommendations on how to proceed. So I will later share a link in the chat to the previous modules and the recordings. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Alice Forsman, and I'm a program manager here at Philea. And I am also the coordinator of the Children Youth Network, which is one of the 14 thematic networks of Philea's Connect cluster. But today we are joined by our colleagues from Bertelsmann Stiftung and Goethe University, who will be leading on the third module of the journey, which will be focused on how to conduct research together with young people. But before we start, and before I hand over the word, I just want to give a very, very quick update or overview of the agenda of today. So let's see if this works. So first, we will be giving a presentation by the colleagues based on their experience with the peer-to-peer research project. The colleagues will also wrap up their modules by providing some key recommendations on how to conduct research together with young people. And we will finish the module with a Q&A session. So please save your questions for this section of the webinar or place them in the chat as we go in case anything comes to mind. But without further ado, I want to hand over the floor to Nadja from Goethe University, Sarah from Bertelsmann Stiftung, and Amir from the Youth Experts team. So over to you, and I'll start sharing my screen.
Thanks a lot. I'm the one sharing the screen, but Sarah, my dear colleague, is starting. So give me 1 second, please.
No problem. I can start by thanking you, Alice, for the nice introduction. Thanking you for the whole Philea network for having us and being part of this peer learning journey. We are very pleased to be here, and we hope that our presentation about peer-to-peer will be interesting to all of you. We'll talk about this study from 3 different perspectives, which might be really interesting to all of you. From the academic perspective, this part will be Nadja Althaus. Nadja holds an MA in Inclusive Education, and she's a research associate and a PhD candidate at Goethe University Frankfurt. So thank you, Nadja, for doing that. And from the perspective of a young person who was involved as a so-called co-researcher in the study, Amir Salahi. Amir joined our young experts team when he was 14. And when the peer-to-peer project began, he was 16 years old. And now he moved on to do his studies of philosophy, political science, economics, sociology at Trinity College in Dublin. So thank you, Amir, for being here today. And then, of course, from the Bertelsmann Stiftung as the cooperation partner in this project. Many of you from the Philea network may know Annette Stein. My name is Sarah Menne. I'm a senior project manager and project lead, and I'm part of Annette's team. Very glad to be here. And so let's start with the presentation. Just a quick look at the agenda, because Alice already did that. I will start with giving you a little bit of an insight why we do this at the Bertelsmann Stiftung, why we set up this project. Then Nadja will and Amir will talk about the participatory research project, and then we'll sum up learnings and transfer. And after that, we're looking forward to your questions and hopefully lively discussion. Okay, next chart, please. Before starting with our project, let me say a few words about the Bertelsmann Stiftung, because not all of you may know our foundation. The Bertelsmann Stiftung is a private operating foundation based in Germany. That means that we only fund projects that we conceive and initiate ourselves, and then support these projects as they're being carried out. Our mission statement is inspiring people, shaping the future, participating in a globalized world. So this sums up the work that is being carried out by the Bertelsmann Stiftung. As we see it, if everyone is to participate in our society, then everyone must have the ability to get involved in society, and our society must offer all of its citizens the chance to do that and to succeed. And our projects are therefore designed to strengthen society and or to help individuals reach their full potential. This is where our project Family and Education comes in. Our project purpose is that all children and adolescents have a right to grow up well and have fair access to education and opportunities to participate in society, regardless of their background. And to create good policies, we must ask for their perspective, for the perspective of the young people themselves, and focus on their needs, rights, and interests. And we cannot do that. We cannot create child-centered policies. This is what we realized in the course of the project. We cannot do that without asking children and youth themselves. And this is why we set up the Young Experts team. This is on the next chart. We created the first Young Experts team, or YEX team as we call it, in 2017. We brought together 17 young people ages 14 to 21 from very different backgrounds. And the original purpose that we thought was that this YEX team should be kind of a sparring partner for our project, for ideas, papers, etc. But the young people were not content with just commenting on what was there, what we as adults designed. They wanted more. They wanted to write their own papers. They wanted to create their own conference ideas and projects. And we as a foundation tried to give them the space whenever possible to do that. And in one of their papers, they said the sentence that you are reading there, fragt uns, was ihr fragen sollt, which translates to ask us also what you should ask. And it means that it is not enough to just ask young people's opinions, but we need to ask them what topics they want to talk about, where they want to be asked, by whom they want to be asked. And so that is the idea of peer-to-peer, which Amir and Nadia will present to you in a moment. But let me finish by saying that over the years, the YEX team, the Young Experts team, became an essential part for our project's work. And without this team, we would not have been there where we are now, without this input of the young people themselves. And as these young people grew older, we wanted to give other younger people the chance. And so we started with a new Young Experts team in 2023 with new ideas that they came up with, especially participatory conferences. And maybe in the later course of the philea peer learning journey, we can talk about that. But today I will hand over to Nadia to present the idea of peer-to-peer. Thank you.
Thanks so much, dear Sarah. And thanks so much, Alice, for the nice introduction and the invitation to this model. And don't worry, we won't go too deeply into the theoretical background, but it is important for me to provide you with some basic information before we describe our project peer-to-peer. So participatory research in Germany is often associated with Kurt Lewin, who was one of the first and only researchers who started involving his subjects more actively in research processes. This quote above is well known and indicates that, in his point of view, it is not enough to publish scientific books or texts, but that research must do more or must provide a little bit more than books. So this attitude is still in great need of legitimization in Germany today, I must confess. And there are also far fewer such approaches here in Germany than in the international comparison, especially not in childhood and youth research. And just to make it very clear, in these participatory approaches, the people who were previously only researched become partners of the researcher. So they become co-researchers in the participatory project. As the second quote from two German researchers clearly emphasizes, participatory research is about research with people and not about or for them. So the approach is about being included in the whole research process, and therefore always has to do with empowerment and self-empowerment processes. And finally, maybe you recognize it, I brought you one quote from two American researchers who are associated with female research, feminist research, that shows that this attitude is also a recurring demand becoming in research. So the well-known slogan that was here repurposed for research context after them, and they demand that no research on us without us. And I've brought you only this one theoretical slide because this reflection seems really central for me when we talk about participation. In the past, participatory action research was about involving people, as I just said, but also about the fact that the research should change reality as a result. So bring changes with it, with the research in cases of bringing more social justice or more environmental protection, depending on the project. Today, the discussion about participatory research in Germany, but I think also in other countries, focuses more on the quality of the participation itself. So if I may point out one quote from Hella von Unger, she's a well-known professor from Munich. She says, "It is crucial that the partners as co-researchers have a say and a right of co-determination. Participation therefore means not only taking part in the research process, but above all, taking part in decision-making process that affect the study design and the joint approach." And this letter of citizen participation, according to Sherry R. Arnstein, that I brought here on the slide, is called up again and again today as a kind of so-called original model. There are other German language models, but they basically keep invoking this model. And based on theory, there is, and that's really interesting, I would say, based on theory, there's a uniform understanding about what participation actually means. Here we talk only about participation when it comes to real partnerships, about delegating power and taking over control or structures that have controlling measurements. So in these theoretical models that we find, it's actually always about the so-called upper level. So if you look here at Arnstein's letter, it's starting at stage 6. So from my point of view, this means what really should be discussed and reflected upon when we talk about participatory or participatory research or participatory processes is the relationship of power. So questions like who has the sovereignty? Who has the sovereignty of interpretation? Who decides what and when and why and on what base? So keeping this in mind, I would now jump over into the practice and leave the theory behind. I would now like to present our participatory research project called Peer-to-Peer and underlined by needs of children and young people surveyed by Bertelsmann Stiftung's youth expert team. And what we mainly did was we have been researching together with young people as a mixed or a diverse team of researchers. And what important facts are, I mentioned it as before, is that this project started with the young people themselves. So this team of experts, the JAX team, they were keen to involve other young people and to ask other young people about their needs. So after several preliminary discussions, I believe inside Bertelsmann Foundation, but also together with us from university, we launched a project, a participatory research project. And we had 2 research interesting that were like guiding principles. So all of us shared that we wanted to learn more about first the needs of children and young people, and secondly, about their accessibility. So how can they be reached out to in order to be being able to actually participate? So how can they be asked in the best way? And the project was developed and worked on together throughout. On the picture here, you can see the 8 young people and of course us, and at the bottom, you find our main research questions in the original tongue. So there was this first question, please note 5 things you need for a good life. And then the discussion could start. And what do you think? How can children and young people be asked about their needs? This is just a very brief description of the research project. I have indicated here the duration, and you see we started actually with the start of the pandemic, which was really challenging. And I listed here the participants from the foundation, the young people as co-researchers out of the YEX team, and another university was also a cooperation partner, that we had staff from 2 German universities. And our methodology was participatory research within this very great field of qualitative research. We were able to conduct 25 group discussions with children starting around the age of 10 and 11 up to 20 years of age. And we had 11 of these group discussions due to the pandemic situation only virtually, and 14 when it was possible again in presence. And due to, this is really strict in Germany, due to the data protection regulations, these virtual settings, the virtual group discussions, could only take place with young people aged 16 or older. So this was the reason why we also have to adapt our whole project plan again and again, because this was the reason that we later published, this was not the plan at first, but we published then an interim report focusing on the findings of this older target group. And then after, in the second phase of the project, so to say, we reviewed, we revised, enriched, and completed the results in our final report and wrapped them up and supplementing them with the findings from the younger target group in presence. So we were thus able to interview around 112 young people in total, which is quite a big sample for a qualitative research. And we researchers from university, we accompanied, we trained, we advised the team and the co-researchers, but we also evaluated, analyzed, and did mainly actually everything together. And we have prepared now just some small insights out of the project for you. Maybe this could also be a part where the discussion later on starts, just to give you a little bit a better feeling and understanding of what we actually did and what we actually faced while conducting the study. So it turned out that really many discussions, meetings, jours fixes were necessary throughout, precisely because so many people were involved in this study. And it was also because the roles at first needed to be clarified and discussed. And we also, for example, that's why it was important for me to bring you also a little bit of theoretical framework. We also used, for example, a German language model of participation to critically reflect on our own collaboration within the team. So every now and then we came together in our group to reflect, how is it going? Is it the way we want to, or what do we need to change? And we used models of participation with these stairs or steps. There are different kinds of on which we could reflect together. There's a scientific method of group discussions that we used. So we used these 25 sessions of group discussions, and the framework there is that you bring in a so-called stimulating question or initial question to indicate a conversation that is as self-running as possible, and in which the people can name their own topics. And we thought that this is a real good method, that the young people just can talk about their issues and bring up whatever topic they have. These were, of course, recorded and then analyzed, interpreted, and evaluated later. And in peer-to-peer, it was very clear from the beginning, actually, that the co-researchers, they wanted to get in touch to the other young people and to the children, and they wanted to talk to them. So what it really meant was that they would take over the moderation of these group discussions. And what we then developed was a kind of scientific method training courses, which enabled the co-researcher to actually do the moderation of all these group discussions. On the right top, you can see here a photo of the setting just before one of the group discussion began. It was a really nice room we got through a cooperation partner in north of Germany. And many other participatory projects, you can see this also in the literature, they have often very big issues and very big problems when it comes in a scientific process, like in the end, when you start analyzing the data and interpreting the data, then it very often does not really work in this participatory way anymore, for reasons of time and money, for example. In peer-to-peer, however, and this is really very big thanks to the good cooperation with Bertelsmann Stiftung. It was really always possible to talk, for example, about time allowances. And it was even possible, and this is really a very good example that participatory approaches also work in this phase of a project. It was possible for us to jointly evaluate all the transcripted data from the group discussion. So we went on weekends together and did joint evaluations there, and also writing workshops together with the co-researchers. On the right side below, you can see how we did this, for example, and giving you another example of the project implementation. And now I think it's Amir's turn to give you some insights on our findings.
Right. Thank you, Nadia. Needless to say, I'm also very honored to be here. And let's dive right into some of the key findings. First and foremost, young people demand both theoretical and practical knowledge. They feel that the current school system is too rigid, focusing on single correct answers and performance under pressure. Moving on, central to their needs is the ability to develop their own identities and make life choices without excessive external control. They crave the freedom to shape their own paths. Next, meaningful connections are also highly valued. Young people need adults to be reliable contact persons who support their social development. Furthermore, protecting their rights is particularly important, as we found out. They emphasize the necessity for their voices to be heard and respected, ensuring their participation in decisions affecting their lives. Financial stability is another significant concern. Having enough money to meet their needs is essential for their well-being and future planning. Additionally, young people need space and opportunities to play and relax. Free time is crucial for their mental health and personal development, allowing them to recharge and grow. Health is also a top priority. They stress the importance of maintaining both physical and mental well-being, showing a keen understanding of healthy living practices. When it comes to the environment, nature holds a great significance. Young people are deeply aware of ecological issues and value nature for recreation and sustainability. Lastly, it's important to say that their needs are very diverse and evolving. They stress that their concerns cannot be fully captured, sort of in a single list, highlighting the complexity of their experiences. To effectively engage with them, we need to consider three key aspects: where to ask, how to ask, and what to ask. It's crucial to reach out to them in diverse settings. It's also important to create a conducive atmosphere, and building trust is essential. And lastly, questions should be personal and serious, reflecting genuine interest in their lives. Now, let's zoom into one of the central needs that throughout all ages and groups young people express, namely education. Young people express clear dissatisfaction with the current school system. They highlight several key issues. The system teaches that there is only one correct answer, discouraging collaboration. Students are expected to manage multiple tasks within limited timeframes under significant pressure. The long school day, often extending to 4 p.m., followed by additional homework, is seen as unrealistic compared to typical real-world job scenarios. In the real world, as young people pointed out, employees work together in teams, have multiple options for problem solving and to collaborate on projects. After completing their workday, they can relax. This is a strong contrast to the demanding and isolating school experience, according to the young people. To address these issues, young people also have or like suggest quite many improvements. Among them, more collaboration. Schools should foster collaborative learning and problem-solving skills. The curriculum should include practical knowledge and life skills relevant to the real world. And lastly, there should be a better balance between schoolwork and personal time to ensure students' well-being.
Thanks so much, Amir. And as it is important for us to get into a discussion with you, this is already our last chart. But let's close with like some few general thoughts and of course our learnings also as a researchers. So you can see, or you can say that the challenges, or maybe also that on like a kind of test bench are, if you are really working and do research together in a participatory way, are the power constellation and the hierarchies, interpretation, sovereignty and ownership, time and costs, structures, but also self-reflection and the ability to take criticism. And just let me give you some example for all these points. So starting at power relations and hierarchies, when we look at our participatory research, just imagine how big the difference is between so-called professional researchers that have contracts with university, get paid for this kind of job, and co-researchers, young people on the other hand, or on the other side, who participate in their free time while being a student or starting university or starting a job or whatever. So this view opens alone a very broad field. When it comes to interpretation, sovereignty and ownership, this is of course maybe more scientific point of view, but imagine how important it is in the scientific world, just only who is the author of something. So which name is the first one in the line of authors, for example, just to give you one of this example. And now you establish a research group with 10 people or more, and you have to like deal, because you want to work like on an equal base with each other. But how do you deal with all these kind of problems? When it comes to time and costs, this is a challenging topic, I would say, because working in a participatory way and doing research in a participatory way takes more time and costs more. So just to give you another example, I told you that we conducted 25 group discussions, and for 14 of them, which we were really luckily able to do them in presence again, we had 14 trips with 2 co-researchers and myself, so 3 people, also with overnight stays, and we went all over Germany. And so in this project, we were really lucky because all the co-researchers got a financial compensation for their work, but this was only possible because we were in this cooperation situation with Bertelsmann Stiftung. When it comes to structures, just to give you another example, communication structures when you work in a participatory way are different. For example, the best way, we needed to find that out, but it showed that the best way of communicating in our project peer-to-peer was via a WhatsApp group where everybody was in. And just to give you one example, we as researchers from university, we don't get any phones from university, so we use our own ones. And of course, if you have a WhatsApp group, you get messages Sunday morning, which was great in the project. But you see, it's a very different structure, being the researcher who is like actually working for that. But in this participatory way, you need just to find different common grounds which work in a participatory way. Otherwise, you won't get this really good connection with each other. And the last point, self-reflection and the ability to take criticism. This is another good example. Just imagine that we are all sitting there together and we try to work in a participatory way. So everybody is really open to tell his or her opinion about something. And then there is a 16-year-old person who says to a researcher from university, even to my professor, and she's really well known in Germany, oh no, that's not the way we see it. And this is not the way it was meant. And we believe we need to analyze it in this or that way. So this is really something that brings your ability of self-reflection or reflection and the ability to take criticism. This needs to be in a very wide range. It is important for me as a researcher from university to say that the findings, Amir just pointed out what we found, that these participatory findings out of the project, they are in line with the current scientific discourse and the existing studies, in particularly on the needs of young people. But still, our team summarized together, and this is very important for the co-researcher, that children can be asked, as well as participatory research succeeds. So main sentence is, it is possible and it works out. And we believe, and that's actually what we saw in comparison to other studies, the research takes on different meanings. So maybe we have the same finding, for example, health or education is a main topic, but still it has totally different layers when you ask the children themselves and when you take the opinions of young people into consideration when you do analysis or interpret these findings. And what we also learned is that everybody learns. So the co-researchers learned, we learned a lot. I believe my colleagues from Bertelsmann Stiftung learned a lot. And it's also that everybody becomes a multiplier. And as the group of researchers was so big, it was even more multipliers in all these different kind of areas. And one last example, as I told you before in the theoretical introduction, Levine and the first thoughts about bringing participatory research or doing participatory research was also that the reality should change. We in peer-to-peer never actually wanted that. But what we heard afterwards was really astonishing because, for example, the head of a social facility reported us back positively that because we went there to conduct a group discussion, and she said that the children who were with us like for 1.5 hours in the group discussion, they took the themes they were talking about with us in the group discussion back into the social institution. And then they tried to talk about differently with the social workers in ways of how they deal with participation in their own social institution. So it actually, and that's what we heard afterwards, after the project, it really made a difference whether we conducted a group discussion in an institution, in a social institution or not. And this was, of course, very touching for us as well to hear that even though we were there only for like 1.5 hours, it made it change for it changed something in the actual world where the children were living. Maybe not in every situation of all these 25 group discussions, but we didn't ask them, but they came back to us afterwards and said it really changed something. Of course, that was really, really nice to hear. And that's actually my last chart. And all of us would like to thank you so much for your interest. And of course, we are open for questions, discussions, and maybe I just stop the presentation now because then we see each other bigger. But of course, I can show another slide if you have any certain questions.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Sarah, Nadia, and Amir. That was really, really, really interesting. I see that there are already some questions in the chat. But I just wanted to jump on the quick question I actually had in the beginning of the presentation myself. Or maybe I didn't catch the reasoning, but how come these were the age ranges of the youth expert board? Because I saw that it was between 14 to 21. And I think in my previous experience also when I was in university, whenever there were youth involved, it was either between, let's say, the ages of 18, 25, or let's say 13 to 16. So I just wanted to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alice. And I'm happy to jump in on this question. When we started to think about the youth experts team, that was a quick idea, and we wanted to establish it really quickly. So the ideal team would have been even with younger children, and also with youth, maybe 25, 26, something like that. But we said that it must be in an age range where they can talk to each other. And we as adults thought that maybe it would be easier to have youth from 14 to 18 or something, 14 to 20, because they were more equal, as we thought. Plus, it is easier if you start with the age of 14, because with younger kids, you need to have more supervision in Germany. So it also had this reason to start with the age of 14. And also we started with people from one area in Germany, so they had the same vacation time. They didn't have to travel that far. With the new team, we have a broader range. And with the new team, we conduct conferences with children from 8 to youth at the ages of 20, 25, something like that. And we see that it works. Even 8-year-olds can do the group discussions with 20-year-olds, and it's very fruitful. But we as adults didn't believe in it at first. So we had to try with this smaller age range, I think. And now it would be nice to have an even bigger range, but to start with 14 has a lot of practical issues and reasons.
Thank you so much. I will hand over the word very soon to Chiara, because I see your hand is up. Thank you, Chiara. But I would first go to the ones in the chat, because I feel like the two of them sort of go together in a way. So Christina wrote, thank you for this, for the insights into the Ambitious project. I wonder how you're going to use the results. From my experience, it is important the participating youth co-researchers beforehand, which impact their efforts might have. And Daniela also put, have you shared the results with public institutions in order to promote policy aligned with youngsters' needs? So essentially how this insight has been shared.
I can start with answering that, and I think Nadja will then the perspective from a research point of view. But from the Bertelsmann Stiftung, or our project's point of view, it was very important to conduct this project and to tell the young people what we are doing with it, that we are writing a report, that this is the project, that we need these answers to create also a questionnaire, a survey where we can ask more young people. And this is one of the ideas in our project, Family and Education, that if we want to design policies for children and youth in Germany, we need to have data, what children in Germany actually need. And there is no survey on the needs of children in Germany, no panel survey. We have some smaller studies, but we don't have like a regular panel that is designed to ask the needs of children. And we cannot design these questions by ourselves. We need young people to design these questions with us. So in these group discussions, we had a lot of input for a questionnaire that has been designed by other researchers that is trying to do a representative study now in Germany. We've actually done one, and the representative part now is running, where we have a questionnaire and ask children and youth in Germany about these topics that the peer-to-peer project and other participatory and other qualitative projects developed. And so this is, you know, it's part of something bigger than that for us in the foundation. And of course, we have also tried to share these results. Nadja can talk about that. We have tried to give the results back to the involved institutions. but also we try to share these results with the politics. Amir, maybe you can talk about the peer-to-politics that we did. So we tried to get an insight, get politicians to learn about peer-to-politics.
Yeah, absolutely. We organized a conference back in November 2022, I believe, after we published the interim report that included all the data from the virtual workshops and research that we had conducted. So during this conference, we basically invited multiple representatives from political institutions, among them German Congress members from the Bundestag, but also representatives from other institutions that work with, alongside, and for young people in Germany. And yeah, that was very fruitful. And even after that, especially, I remember that I was invited to lots of conferences in Germany. I was even invited to come to the German Bundestag to introduce key findings and results, because to make the context maybe a bit more like clear, recently in Germany, there were central key discussions surrounding fighting youth and child poverty. And what's quite tragic is that every time politicians were talking about fighting child poverty, they didn't really involve and include any children or young people into these discussions. So what also Sarah tried to say is that it's quite ineffective and almost, I want to say, impossible to create and implement effective policies that affect the lives of children in my generation without knowing what they even consider to be important or the key issue. So I think that it's also been quite helpful for politicians and other institutions to have this data. And it's also, I think, quite significant to say that our study is not going to be the last, hopefully. It just points out the necessity for more participatory research in order to create policies that actually shape the lives of young people in a meaningful way.
Maybe just let me add 3 points, because my colleagues already said a lot, but I would like to point out that, of course, we are in dialogue with other scientific institutions in Germany, also big institutions. And actually, after this project, they came to us and asked us how we did that. So like in detail, because they would like to start doing things like that. And they asked us, how did you conduct the group discussions? How was it possible? So really like look on the details. And what I tried, and this is very interesting because it's not so easy in the scientific context, because there's still this thing with the ivory tower, you know, where the scientific people are. And if I come to give a lecture or to give a speech, about this project, I always tried to ask one of my former co-researchers if he or she wants to join me. And if there are the 2 of us, it's always a little bit, we get very good feedback from people who are close to the field, who are like out of the field, social workers, etc. But when it comes to the university, that's what I said at the beginning, under great legitimization in the scientific world. But still we try that because we think that our findings value and that they make a change. And just to add one other thing, I prepared it in the background while my colleagues were talking. Through the cooperation with Bertelsmann Foundation, we were able, as we said, to publish this interim and the final report only in German. Sorry for that. But what we did, and this was, I think, Annette for Bertelsmann Stiftung also won the first time. In our final report, the first pages are a summary for the children, because it was important for us also to give back to the participant out of our group discussions what we actually did. And I just can show you or give you a quick example how that looked. I think you can see it. This is the cover. And then the first slides, this was 1 and 2 and 3 pages. So these are really a wrap up of the final results in a very easy language. Before, when then you scroll, then the more adult scientific way of writing came. But this is at the very beginning, and there was also a separate flyer with that, which haven't been possible without the cooperation, because as you all know, and I believe you know it from your universities in your countries, it's always an issue with money and time. So with this strong partnership in our project, we're really able to also present our findings in a very good way, I would say.
Thank you so much, all of you. That was a very comprehensive answer. Thank you so much. So I will hand over the word because Chiara has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Alice, and thank you for this amazing presentation and results of the project. Actually, as a Learning for Wellbeing, we have developed also our approach on how to involve young and children in our work, in make them more participating in every decision-making process. And actually, what really touched me was the result about education, because in the meantime, I mean, I was also, and I'm an expert from the expert group of the European Commission on Wellbeing at School. And one of the main points was that children and students, they don't feel well in school, and the well-being and their mental health are not well considered enough. And actually, I will put in the chat the guidelines that we have drafted with the Commission, so you can have a look, because they are really fresh. They have been published in May. So my question actually was already asked, how to promote those results and make this way of making young people, children participating a stable mechanism in every activity, in school particularly, where, sorry to come back on our approach, we really think that it's more than a dialogue between adults and children, or adult and young. It's really building partnership together, partnership among generation. And so my question is, and I really appreciate the fact that it was mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, that participation is a matter of balance of power. So meaning building partnership, meaning that each actors involved in this dialogue has the same power. So my question is, how you would like to, how you intend to follow up this project, and how to make this participatory mechanism stable and wider applied and uptaken. So.
I think, Sarah, this question goes more maybe to you, but maybe I can say one word before. I'm doing my PhD on participatory research as well. So I'm trying with the work I'm doing to maybe get a better ground for this kind of research in Germany, you know, like through publishing articles about it, and to make it more visible, because in German scientific contexts, it's not so visible. I believe it's different in Canada, for example. I believe also maybe in the Scandinavian and in the UK, but in Germany, it's not so visible, and it's not very common at all in children and youth research. But the theme of participation in our whole society is getting bigger and bigger. So like jumping on this train, I know that some colleagues of mine, and also of course myself, I try to like bring it in the scientific discussion again. But I think, Sarah, maybe you can say something about your work within the foundation context.
Yeah, thank you, Nadja. So what we see is that the topic of participation, as Nadja said, it has raised more to, it has become more important in our society, and people are talking about children and youth participation more and more. But the problem is what they mean with it is not the same as what we did. This was really important. This is why Nadia talked about what we mean by participatory research. And we also need to reflect every time when we talk about participation, what kind of participation are we talking about? Because sometimes it's just, sometimes you just ask people's opinion and then you think about them and then you don't do it, you explain, it's okay. Sometimes it's a real partnership. So what we try to do in our project is to do things like peer-to-peer and then to bring them to other partners, to politicians, as Amir told you, to other foundations or other NGOs. And we are trying to have people take a look at what it really means, what are the hindrances, but what are also like the key findings and what you get out of it. And if you really listen to children and youth, and if you really share your power with them. And we had some we had this peer-to-politics event conference that Amir talked about, and now we are establishing participatory conferences with the new youth experts team. And we also invite adults to see how young people work and what that you can really work together with young people. And I think if politicians and other decision makers really see it, they partake in this conference and they see that it works, that it's really fruitful, then they can take that and bring it to their own organization, bring it back to the society. But you really have to see it and really take part of it to know what it means. But what we also always say is that you cannot do participation everywhere. There's a lot of things that you need to think about. If you need results quickly and if you don't have that much money, you can ask some young people, but you have to tell them, okay, this is not a real partnership, this is some kind of consultation, etc. So you always have to be transparent, I think, in what you're doing, and then you can make a difference. And I saw in the chat that if we have considered paying children for their work, so not children but the youth experts, yes, we pay them a compensation for their days, and when they became co-researchers, we raised the compensation, so they got more than what they got when they were just parts of the youth experts team, because they were real experts and real co-researchers. But that meant that we needed more project money for this part of the peer-to-peer project. This is also a problem that if you have to be transparent about that it's it's also an issue of costs, of time, but it can be really fruitful.
Yeah, and just to add one thing about the compensation, as I learned just lately, is that a colleague from a Canadian university told me that in her system, they have the opportunity to employ also like people out of the community, so community partners, as co-researchers for certain projects. In Germany, we don't have any structures like this at universities. So if just out of the university, if we would have tried to do a participatory research, it would have been me doing all the organization, and I guess we wouldn't have had any money like to give out a compensation. So that's again what I would really like to focus from the German context, working on this level. Also, that, just put it that way, makes you really feel good as well when it comes to what we actually did, but also on the way we worked with each other. I would have had such a bad feeling if I knew the students, my co-researchers, travel 3 days with me just for nothing in their free time, and they have all of you know that they have so tight timetables at school. They have to learn and study so much, and so they would have spent their free time 3 days to work in a project which has my name on and did so much, that the balance wouldn't have fit. So within this cooperation with the Bertelsmann Foundation, it was really a good way, and also very respectful way when it came to how we worked with each other, but also the conditions. I think just out of the German university system, it wouldn't have been possible. And I think the structures in different countries, they allow sometimes maybe also participatory settings, which we haven't in Germany yet.
Maybe let me add something. I think Chiara's question or comment also, I think you also addressed the issues in education that that your experiences resonate quite well with the findings that I pointed out earlier. I think it's quite important to consider and also recognize that peer-to-peer or participatory research should not just be a topic that we keep inside the box of academia. You know, like for many people, it can sound quite abstract. Why are we doing this? How innovative are our findings even? And when it comes to like many issues that we and also young people identified in the group discussions, we have to acknowledge that certain issues can only be addressed politically because we're talking about systemic issues, right, in education. Nonetheless, I'm sure that the findings have severe implications for politics, for education, for social policy workers, and many other people. And even this discourse right now that we're having is quite meaningful because you're hopefully going to share what you learned today. And keeping this debate up and talking about it is very important to not be fed up with something that we called pseudo-participation, right? Sarah was talking about it, structures that might appear to be very inclusive, but end up being not, quite performative, I want to say. Yes, that's only what I wanted to wrap up with.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we answered most of the questions in the chat, but I also just wanted to reflect also what you said, Sarah, and also, I mean, regarding also what we mean when we talk about participation, because I feel like we all have different, you know, expectations of what that would mean, and something we reflected upon in the steering committee of the children and youth as well, and why we're on this journey and having so many different levels to how to involve children and youth and doing it meaningfully, and what that actually looks like in the end, and keeping this conversation going. I think there is another question in this chat. Oh, Christina's shared a online survey done by youth experts as well. So great.
Yeah, we have the same name, funnily, and so I'm smiling every time you're talking about youth experts. So maybe we can do an exchange. That would be fun.
Oh, thank you. Are there any further questions?
Yes, maybe I'd let me see if I can switch on my video. Yes, hello. I'm Lucy. I'm with the Liliana Foundation. I've done a pilot last year in Kenya with youth with disabilities through our Kenyan partner, where we did an emancipatory disability research pilot for them to actually look at some of the issues that they were coming across in their lived experience in terms of like skills acquisition and getting employment. And then, you know, conducting research and analyzing findings. And then they actually continued to take action on those findings. But I found that actually on the ground, there's both the empowering aspect of this, that they started to identify themselves, because I visited Kenya and then they would say, well, I'm so-and-so and I have this occupation, and then I'm a researcher, you know, and it came with so much pride, and it became kind of part of their identity, how they introduced and identified themselves. And so it had other empowering aspects also in terms of employment outcomes and social outcomes and so on. So that empowerment aspect was very important. At the same time, they were actually researching things that they found important. What I found is that on the other side, in the NGO, like in my organization, and also maybe in like academics here, have a problem with calling this research. So I think Nadia also kind of talked about that, because the way we see something as academic and scientific, it's almost that it has to be like objective, whereas this is coming from lived experience. These are things that they are experts on because they're running into these barriers on a day-to-day basis, but they're looking at it through that lens of their lived experience. And so by definition, it's somehow subjective. And so we get into this discussion, is it or is it not scientific and academic? And I think that, yeah, I'd like to hear, you touched on it. I find it sometimes an obstacle because it's not seen as research. It's kind of seen as some kind of social action or something. Whereas I think then you kind of lose, sometimes people then say, oh, it doesn't work, or it's not really scientific, and then they throw out the baby with the washing water. Or so please, I'd like to hear your experience with that, and also maybe some tips on how to get linkages with academia here or locally in the countries where we operate. Because that's a challenge to find that link between universities and institutions doing research and actually this experienced, lived experience-based kind of participatory research.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think you wrapped up the situation in Germany. I don't know from which country are you?
The Netherlands.
All right, okay. Yeah, I feel everything you say, actually, and I don't know if I have a real answer, actually, but I have learned a lot from this professor from Munich University, Hella von Unger, that I quoted earlier. And she's like a sociologist, but in qualitative research, and doing participatory research is her thing. And she said once that we have to deal with that. We have to deal with that gap. So there are in the scientific world people who would say that's not real research, what you do, that is far too objective, that is taking over social action. You are changing the reality instead of observing it and describing what you see. On the other hand, she said, because she's also very familiar in the international participatory context, and she said that in other countries, the way of looking at this kind of research is so different. So I guess maybe in some European countries, it's more that there is such a difference. And she would say that, for example, in Northern America, it's more that this participatory thing is one detail within qualitative research. So they like put it somewhere else, and then the discussion is totally different. And maybe one thing out of my work, what I can maybe recommend is that I really try to also on, let's say in this round, on really high class lectures I gave, I always try to go there with a partner out of the project. So there were the two of us. And that's maybe something Sarah and Amir also pointed out for the area of politics. It makes also a difference in the scientific world if there is a young person who's talking next to me. So I can, like, what I also pointed out in our on one of our slides is that what we found actually really is in line with the scientific discussion. So that actually shows that our findings are scientific findings that you can talk about and that relate to the findings of other people who did research that was not participatory. So this is one thing. And then maybe it makes a difference if also in the scientific context, a young person stands beside me and the both of us tell us what we learned in this project. And in the end, maybe we have to deal with this gap. This is actually what I experienced. Yeah.
Maybe I can add something from the point of view from the foundation, because we also get that. And then what we try to do is bring in the cooperation partner and young expert. We try to explain exactly what we did and exactly what we did not. So yeah, of course, young researchers cannot have like a university degree, etc. And then we explain this is one kind of research, and then there's other kinds of research. But let me give you like another example. So when I started working in the fields of family politics, there were a lot of people who said, well, you know, you're like working here and researching there, but you don't have kids yet. So you can't really tell me what's going on now. And now when I'm talking about family politics, everyone's like, well, you're biased because you're a mother. So one or the other way, you're always doing it wrong. Because what I mean is like, you can never, you try to be objective, but you can never be objective, because also as a researcher, you have like life experience. For example, having children or not having children, this changes the way you look at some things. And then, yeah, you need to come up with examples like this, and then people may laugh and may look at you differently. But it's for some reason, I think the more you explain what exactly you did and what you did not, the more people will understand and honor the things that you were able to do with this participatory setup.
Yeah, and just to add one thing, because I think there was another question, we were really transparent in our reports in both of them. So that's what Sarah said. We really wrote what we did and why we did it. And actually in my work, I am about to publish really an article which was in a peer review also about this project, to make it more transparent, because that's what you see also from Miri's other colleagues did, that it's not visible in the German context. So I really think we need more information. We need more information about implementation, about methods that worked, that didn't work, how they were conducted. So we need more to being able to also find in the scientific context ways that worked and ways that don't work. So we actually, everybody is criticizing it, but we still know too little, I would say, in the German discourse. There's not enough literature, there are not enough experience in a scientific way that we can really talk about it, not in childhood and youth research.
Totally, yeah. Returning to your question, Lucy, I think it's also quite important to distinguish between epistemological concerns that are important to raise and the question of who, holds or claims the social authority to say something is not academic or not valid. And I think that's a question we need to consider, especially when it's affecting young people who are usually quite powerless anyways. So I think when it comes to research with marginalized groups especially, it's very important to consider who in the end is making a moral or epistemological scientific judgment about the validity of the research and the data you have.
That's a very good point, because it's actually coming more from us than from the youth and the local context where the research was actually conducted. And I think it's also, social sciences somehow have become very detached sometimes from the object of the study, and this is very it confronts people with the role of the researchers themselves in the research, and and nobody is fully objective. What is objective reality? It's a point in awareness. So thanks for all those inputs. That's very, very helpful.
Thank you for this lively discussion. That was really great. I want to hand over the word to Christina, but Alina, I saw that you had your hand up before.
Well, I think it was quite covered, actually. I have the feeling this whole discussion is a lot about maybe tension and I'm physicist by training, and the natural science overruling a little bit sometimes the social science. And maybe in northern countries when we have a lot of, I see this in the medicine also, and the little space for the feeling of patient and trying to rationalize and things like this. So yeah, I think you said it all. But we have this discussion at the foundation, when is an evidence an evidence? And it's exactly the same question, in fact.
Yeah, we're actually now, because what we're, maybe just latch onto this and then I'll give Christina the floor, but we're trying to look at participatory monitoring, evaluation and learning, because we're trying, like sometimes we set a goal, like so many youth, and they learn this trade and they get this amount of salary, but now we're starting, what is their vision for success? What do I want? And how do I know I get there? And how do I know I'm on track? And so whatever the goal is for us doesn't really matter. We try to support them in their progress and then see if we can make our monitoring then also based on their own goals. So we just see how far are they on track. So it's a whole different way of thinking about what is evidence. How do we measure impact? Is it what do I decide what is a success? No, success looks different for everybody. So, and that's also going back to the participation. If we're trying to help someone, it shouldn't be on our terms. It should be on actually what do they need, what do they want, and that requires actually discussion, connection, really listening to somebody. It's completely shifting the way, you do good, because we think we're doing good, but according to who? So yeah, interesting. Thanks.
Thank you all. Christina, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I might have missed on that. Or, I wonder how you found the young co-researchers. Was it like an existing team of youth experts that you have been working with for a longer time?
Yeah, Sarah, you or me? Maybe I can start. Yeah, maybe I can start. I jumped into the boat when, at that point, the foundation has had before this youth experts team, and they were doing things about, I think poverty in Germany, poverty of young people in Germany. That was their main topic, and I think out of that group came the idea that because they brought their expertise into Bertelsmann Stiftung and they helped them, so to say, to bring it to a broader audience, like into politics or anything. And I think, Amir, out of your team came the idea, we do not only need the expertise out of our youth expert team, but we need to ask others. And I think that was the point actually where my boss at university asked me whether I could come to an open discussion with people from Bertelsmann Foundation because there was this idea young people want to ask other young people. That was, I think, the elephant in the room. And out of this, we all together created this participatory project. So I think there was the youth expert team, and out of them, because you were more at the beginning, 17, there were in the end and throughout our whole study 8 young people who switched their roles. They stayed youth experts, but they also had a second role becoming co-researchers in our peer-to-peer project. Right, Amir?
Yeah, you can sort of say we redefined our role, our position within the project. We just went ahead and said, we don't just want to comment on your papers and studies and be consulting. We want to create and actually be part of what you're publishing.
Yeah, and maybe another insight out of the implementation, this was also a challenging moment because the young people who came to us, to researchers from university, they said they wanted to talk to other young people or they wanted to interview them. And so we found together this method of group discussion. But if you are familiar with the scientific method of group discussion, this means that the moderation needs to be really in the back. You give like one question and maybe you ask something, but it's all about self-running discussion out of the people who are joining. So what Amir just said was that they were kind of empowered before, being youth experts, becoming more able to talk in front of people, to make their own points, to bring their own topics and themes in. But the role of the scientific moderation of a group discussion is very different. That's why we needed this process before we went into the field, because if you would have stayed in your old role while conducting the group discussion, the method wouldn't have worked, because then we would have had again your topics, but not the topics from the young people. So it was all about taking yourself back and giving an open space. And I think that made a really, really big difference, that the young people who came to our group discussions were asked at the first place from young people. I was always on my calling, we were always there, but we were in the background. We didn't say a word. I was like writing notes and I was listening and we were recording it. But the situation was young people are talking to young people. And I think that made a very big difference in terms of what was sayable, what became sayable, and how the flow of the discussion was.
And so what we sometimes get is that those young experts are special youth, you know, that they're really special. And this is because this is the reason why they could conduct this research or being experts. But that's not the truth. So what they said in all their conferences that were like, we are normal young people. And as a foundation, we found these people through partners, organizations, etc. We just, you know, made an open call, who wants to be part of this team, and then we try to, you know, put together this team in a very big variety of age, background, school form, etc. But we didn't ask them, how engaged are you? Do you have good grades? Can you talk to the public? No. Some of them could do that at the beginning. Some of them could do that at the end. Some of them worked in the background. They were just, you know, normal young people, and the roles were adapted. And as Nadja said, the roles changed. And then we, like, as a team, shared power basically, or changed the roles. So it wasn't like the idea came from the young people and we did exactly what they wanted to do, or the idea came from us and we did exactly what we wanted to do. But the idea came from them. We talked about how can we do this in a scientific way, and then we set up the project. But it could be also done with other young people. This is really important, and they're not like, you know, very, very special. This is what they, Amir, what you and your colleagues always said.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was really interesting. Thank you also to the participating colleagues in this lively discussion. Are there any further questions to our presenters today?
In case there are no questions, I have another last example maybe because it just came to my mind because there were so many comments or also questions on this health issue. And maybe just one insight out of the peer-to-peer study. Amir mentioned it when he presented the findings to you. One important finding was the topic of health. And within the topic of health, mental health. And just to give you this one very concrete example of how the participatory way changed also how we looked at the findings was that at the time we published this interim report, the pandemic was high on in Germany. So actually it was really, there were several discussions when we adult researchers, we thought, all right, okay, now we have the pandemic going on, which was for the young people in Germany, everybody, but for the group of young people in Germany, really a bad situation. Of course, in our findings, now we find the issue of mental health, but through only, and this was really only through the joint analysis with the co-researchers, we found out, because they made a very strong point that mental health has always been an issue for young people, but through the pandemic situation, it was sayable. It became sayable, or you were able to talk about it. So I think we might have misinterpreted maybe if we wouldn't have had the participatory view on the findings. So this, for example, made really a change in how we presented our findings later on. So it was not a finding that only related to the current situation, but with the help of our co-researchers, we digged deeper, and then we found, okay, mental health is, even for younger children, this is also an important finding, because also 9 and 10-year-old children talk about that the mental health situation needs to be balanced. This is a finding that I would say that we only found out in this way of looking at it through the participatory approach. Yeah.
Thank you, Nadja. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think that there are any further questions in the chat. So unless anyone wants to share. This module will be as the previous one, as I posted in the chat. Also, it's being recorded, but we will also be capturing the learnings that's come out today, and any sort of material that's been used will also be uploaded on the website. So if there is anything that's been missing, you can always go back to that and share it with any colleagues you may think find it interesting and useful.
Yeah, and of course you can get back to us. I think I can speak to all of us. So if you want to reach out either to Sarah or to myself, you can, if you don't copy the address, because there were also some writings in the background, just ask Alice and she can pass on our data.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Well, we're wrapping up today. I will, since I know I won't see any of you online for a bit of time, because I hope that everyone is leaving for some well-deserved summer holidays. I'm wishing you a very nice summer with hopefully nice weather, because the thunderstorm just arrived here in Sweden, so I need to go and close the windows. Thank you, everyone. Thank you especially to Bertelsmann Stiftung and Goethe University.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ami.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Take care.
Thank you, Nadja.